Hi, I'm April. I am a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and today we're going to be talking about how to finish a song. This is a really common struggle. It's something that a lot of people have trouble with, and it's actually something that I struggled with a lot early on in my songwriting. Basically, it's when you come up with a really great verse 1 and you move along to your awesome pre-chorus, and maybe you even come up with a really great chorus, but then you just don't know where to go from there. You get to some point and you just kind of get stuck. And for a lot of people, it's going to be the same point during every song that you try to write. You're just going to find that one little moment and you're like, I'm going to go make a sandwich or something. So what can be done here? Number one is that you want to find a time to write songs when you will not be distracted and when you know you're going to have time to finish the song. When you start a song in the morning, right before you go to school or you go to work, it can be really hard to find a time to finish it because you know that you've got a time crunch. So what you should try to do is try to find a time during the day when you know that you're going to have time to finish it. I like to practice at night right before I go to bed. But for you, that could be right when you get home from work or right after you've finished dinner. It can be kind of whenever feels right in your schedule to make sure that you can actually get the song finished. You don't have to do this for every single song that you write, and you certainly don't have to do it forever. It doesn't have to be a thing that you force yourself into. And eventually you're going to get to a point where you do feel comfortable finishing entire songs. So you can be a little bit more lenient. But for the moment, try to at least find a few times during the week where you can sit down and actively write an entire song in one sitting. Number 2, when the temptation comes along to stop, do not stop. Keep going. Continue writing whatever it is that you have been writing. Don't just say you're gonna finish it later, because if you don't already have that habit, if that's not something you already do, it's going to be really hard to make that habit happen just out of nowhere. It's totally okay if you completely hate everything you've just written. Just keep going anyway and try to write whatever you can write in that time. It is much, much easier to go back and edit something than it is to just pick something up where you left off and try to piece together how you were feeling at that moment. Number 3, plan your song out from the get-go. If you already have a plan in place, you're going to have a much easier time thinking of the actual words to describe whatever it is that you're feeling. I prefer to do this by outlining, but that doesn't have to be the way that you go about it. It's just a really nice way to basically get all of your thoughts on paper so that you don't get stuck later on. I'm going to put a link in the description to my personal outline, so if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and check it out. If it's a song that you've already started, go ahead and take stock of what you already have. Pay attention to the story, the characters, the imagery, pay attention to any metaphors that you're using, and then try to think of a bunch of different ways that that story could progress. Just go ahead and brainstorm a bunch of plot points that you could potentially go to, and from there, you'll have a much easier time narrowing it down to something that feels right for your story. Something that a lot of people tend to miss when it comes to finishing up a song is that when you go over one section over and over and over, you start to kind of polish it in your head like a little pearl, and it becomes so beautiful and well polished that when you write anything to go along with it, it's not going to sound good. Or at least it's not going to sound good in comparison to what you've already written. So basically when you start a song and you just kind of leave it, it hangs in your head and it doesn't really resolve. So when you go on to write that second verse, you're going to have a lot of trouble actually getting it on paper because it's not ever going to sound as good as you want it to sound. But it's really only a familiarity game, because the more that you get familiar with your new section, the more it's going to feel like it matches with the previous one. You'll kind of find over time that the more you go over those first few sections, the less your last section is going to sound right. So instead, let whatever comes out come out. And it's allowed to be bad and you're allowed to not like it at first, but over time it's going to start sounding better and you're going to make those little tweaks and edits and you'll actually find that it's a lot easier than it feels like it is. Lastly, practice. It's so important that you practice finishing entire songs. Because if you're practicing little pieces, if you're practicing your chorus writing, or if you're practicing coming up with chord progressions, you might find it's really hard to get all of those things to be cohesive. But if you try to practice just writing a silly song about food or about colors or about something that kind of pops into your brain that feels silly, and then you actually go ahead and finish that song, however ridiculous it is, you're gonna get practice. And the more practice you get, as I've harped on through this entire rant, the easier it's going to be to finish your song. So do your best. Try writing every single day, and if you don't get around to it, don't beat yourself up. It's not the end of the world. Practice tomorrow. But try to write as many complete songs as you can. And I think you'll find that it'll be much easier to finish a full song in the future. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a like, let me know in the comments, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and be sure to ring that little bell so that you get notifications the next time I post something.